Have you ever waited to feel confident before taking action? Well, you're not alone. And it makes sense because the world will tell you you need to be confident in order to be successful at something. But I want to suggest that confidence is overrated. Because what's really true is that it takes courage, not confidence, to be successful. And if you wait for confidence to come, you might be waiting a long, long time. Let me explain. It was the fall of 1983, beginning of high school, and I was sitting in my acting class. And if you had been sitting with me this particular day, you would have seen my teacher, Mr. Smith. And Mr. Smith was an older, probably about my age now actually, balding gentleman, and he was a little bit rough around the edges, kind of intimidating. Can you picture someone like that? So this particular day, Mr. Smith says, "Deirdre, Jennifer, come up here and read this scene." So I jump up, and I'm part scared because I've never read a scene for him before, but I'm also excited because I really want to show him what I can do. See, since the 4th grade, I had been acting, and I would usually get a pretty good role. But my crowning moment came the year before when I was cast as Scrooge in the 8th grade musical. And what made getting that role even sweeter, ladies, I beat 4 boys for the part. So going into high school, I was really confident in my acting ability. So we read the scene, look to Mr. Smith, and he says, "Jennifer, well done. You could be the next Meryl Streep." Wow, I'm thinking. Now, if you were around in the 80s, you know nobody was better than Meryl. She was winning all sorts of awards. So I'm thinking, Jennifer was in Scrooge with me. She was the ghost of Christmas Future. So if she could be the next Meryl Streep, I was the lead. Who's he going to say I could be? He looks at me and he says, "Deirdre, that stunk." I was crushed. Felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Has that ever happened to you? Where someone says something that just rocks your world? And I remember wanting to scream, "What? How is this possible?" But I was too embarrassed. And so saying nothing, I just slunk back to my seat and I sat down. Now, I wish I could tell you that because of that moment, I grew a thicker skin. I wish I could tell you that I chalked it off to a bad day or a bad opinion. But I didn't do that. And you know what else I didn't do? I didn't take the stage again for 24 years. No acting, no speaking like this, nothing. And looking back now, what makes it sadder to me is that when I was 10, my mom was killed in a car accident. And acting was the only place that I felt happy and sometimes even normal. Now, to be fair to Mr. Smith, I can't tell you he said the exact words, "You stink." But whatever he did say, it had that same effect on my fragile 14-year-old psyche. And now your story might be totally different than mine. But if you're like most people, you've had one or many incidents in your life where you've been rejected, or you've failed, or not been accepted. And isn't it easy in those moments to make the Mr. Smiths the enemy? But they're not the enemy. Our real enemy is fear. See, for 24 years, I allowed the fear of not being good enough hold me in a prison and keep me for something I loved. And for 24 years, I listened to fear when it said, Deirdre, just wait until you feel confident. Then you can take the stage again. It never happened. And as you can imagine, or maybe you've experienced, our fears don't generally isolate themselves to one area of our life. And so what I started noticing over time was that waiting for confidence was my go-to excuse for not doing the things that scared me. And maybe you can relate. Now, obviously, something's changed because I'm standing in front of you today. And what's changed was I got tired of fear running my life. And so 12 years ago, I went on a relentless pursuit to do what I call fire my fear. And today, you're going to get a little bit of what I've learned. Now, when I say fire your fear, I am not suggesting that you should try to get rid of fear, because that is not realistic and it's not necessary. What it is about is learning how to fire fear from being the chief decision maker in your head. Because once you do that, it's so much easier to make decisions that move you forward in your life rather than hold you back. And then when that happens, life becomes this adventure in possibilities rather than a sea of limitations. So in the next 8 minutes or so, you're going to pick up 2 of the foundational formulas for firing your fear. And they both revolve around change. So the first thing you must do is you must change your perspective on what it means to be afraid. Now, most people, when they initially feel that feeling of fear, they automatically think, oh no, something bad's going to happen. I'm not going to do well, I'm going to fail, I'm not going to look good, whatever your version is. And then you do nothing, which makes sense, because if you think something bad's going to happen, why would you take action? But here's what's really true. Being afraid can't predict a future event. Being afraid just means you're afraid. But even better, what I have found is that if you're not afraid, you're not playing a big enough game. See, it's actually good to feel afraid some of the time, because most of the time, 9 times out of 10, on the other side of fear is not doom and gloom, is not bad things, but it's great growth and opportunity. But the only way to have that growth is to lean into the fear. So how do you practically apply this? Here's what you do. Next time you're feeling afraid, or if there's a situation right now that you're struggling with, you're avoiding, ask yourself the following questions. The first is, what if this feeling of fear is actually an indication that something good is going to happen? The next is, what if this is my time to take courageous action? Or as my daughter Annika used to say, exercise my courage muscle. And then make your decision on what you're going to do based on the answers to those questions, not on the answer fear is giving you. The next step to firing your fear is to change your position. And this can best be illustrated through a story. So I wish you could have been with me. This was back in October of 2010. And I was sitting in a sweaty church gymnasium watching my then 6-year-old son, Noah, play floor hockey. And if you've ever watched kids at that age play a team sport, you know there's not a lot of strategy to the game, right? So this particular morning, things were different. For much of the game, Noah's team was actually playing offense, and the other team was playing defense. So this meant that Noah's team was scoring a lot of goals. And I was really excited, and I was cheering with the other parents until I noticed the faces of the little boys on the other team. This one little boy, Jack, had this look on his face as if to say, "Come on, bring it on. Nothing's getting past me." Whereas this other little boy, Ian, had more of the deer in the headlights kind of look, like, I hope the puck doesn't get past me. But no matter what their thought was, those boys had the same thing in common. They were so busy defending the goal that there was no way they could think to score a goal for themselves. But don't many of us go through life like that? We're so busy playing defense. We're so busy trying to keep things out of our comfort zone that we rarely give ourselves the opportunity to pick up a stick and score a goal. But if you want to truly fire your fear, you have to start playing offense. And the way to practically do that, and this is going to sound scary, but it actually gets fun after a while, is that each and every day, instead of going out into the world and trying to hold things back, right? Trying to ward off things that make you uncomfortable from getting into your comfort zone, go out and look to do one thing every day that makes you uncomfortable. And it doesn't matter how small it is. It could be just driving a different way to work. Maybe it's a little bigger. Maybe it's like I advised my son Noah to do just this week when his close friend knocked down his snowman that he worked really hard on. He was mad. I said, you know what, instead of going to your room and storming off and pretending you're not mad, why don't you have a hard conversation and tell him how you feel? Or maybe it's changing jobs or starting a business. But look for one thing different to do. See, you have to intentionally train. Just like you would train for a marathon, you have to intentionally train in order to fire your fear. And what's really wonderful is the more you get out there and you take intentional, courageous action, the more your comfort zone is going to expand, and you're actually going to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And see, when you're comfortable being uncomfortable, there is nothing you can't do. See, because what most of us are afraid of is our own emotions. The reason why we avoid certain things is that we don't want to feel bad. And we're not quite sure that we'll be able to tolerate our own negative emotions. And so the more you push yourself to do things that are uncomfortable, the more you start to trust yourself that you can tolerate your own negative emotions and that they won't destroy you. And then the ironic thing that happens over time is that the confidence you've been so desperately waiting for becomes yours. Because courageous action is actually the fuel for getting more confidence into your life. It's not the other way around, as you may have been led to believe. So, change your perspective, change your position, and you'll change your life. And I want to leave you with this slogan. And this is something they say at the highest bungee cord jumping bridge in the world. It's in South Africa. And they use this slogan very successfully to get otherwise sane people to jump like over 700 feet to their potential death. You may have been there. You have, okay. Fear is temporary. But regret is forever. What action are you willing to take today in order to avoid feeling regret tomorrow? Thank you.